Hello, my name is Charles Porter, and this is 16.3 coaching session review and development plan. So basically, with my session, I basically did a session on a layup. So I basically went through the teaching points and went through them slowly, step-by-step method on basically how to do a layup, how to perform it, and basically how to nail it and how to execute it very well. So the session aims then. So by the end of the session, I'd basically want to teach the group how to do a layup, so how to do it and how to basically do it effectively. So in this session, I basically want them to know the teaching points so that afterwards they understand them and they can basically carry it out on someone else. So say, for example, if they had to go and teach a group about a layup, I would hope that by the end of the session, they could actually do that themselves. And then by the end of the session, I also want them to be able to do a layup within a match or game situation. So I want them to take the practice that they've done with a layup and I want them to execute it in a match. So the session objectives then. So what do I want? How do I do this and how do I basically get them to achieve this? So basically, I want to go through the teaching points of them. So I want to go through them slowly and step by step so that they absolutely nail it when they take part in it. I also want to basically go through the stage of progressive drills. So at the start, I'll basically go through what a layup is, and then as the session goes on, I would like to basically progress the drills further and further so that it gets harder and harder. So yeah, and I also just want to basically coach them throughout it, tell them what they're doing well, tell them what they're doing bad, so that they can improve on it throughout the session as it goes along. So basically the analysis then. So here I've got the planning and I've got the delivery of them. So the strengths of my planning then. So in my planning I basically had progressive drills as I've said before. So I'm basically increasing the intensity of the drills. I'm basically increasing how hard they get as they go along. In my planning I also had a match or game situation which was based around the layup. So basically if you were to have a layup, you would get 5 points. Or as the game went along, if the game was a lot closer, I'd up the points a lot more. So say like 10 points for a layup. Um, Also with the planning, my teaching points looked very clear and looked very easy to understand. So I thought my teaching points were very good. In the delivery, so how I actually delivered it, my progressive drills very well. I got positive feedback from the players about how I progressively basically increased the layup and how hard it can get during a match. So it got harder and harder as they went along, so they weren't just doing the same thing. And also, I got positive feedback about the match and game, mainly because I was focusing on the layup and how that was more points, is what a normal shot would be. And also, I adapted because basically in my session, I had these people come in and they sort of interrupted with my session. They got in the way of the game and match situation, and they basically told me to be quiet because there was exams going on in the room near. So I was basically told not to bounce the ball. So what I did with this is I basically I stopped the whole bouncing of the ball. So in the match situation, no one was allowed to bounce the ball, and we basically played it like netball. So you are allowed 2 steps, which is ideal because doing a layup, you have to take 2 steps before you have the shot. So everyone was allowed 2 steps and they weren't allowed to bounce the ball. So I got positive feedback about my adapting skills. However, I did have some weaknesses. So in my planning, my risk assessment did have some weaknesses, as I didn't really plan for all the risks, all the possible risks that could have occurred. So on the day there was a lot of chairs and there was a lot of tables in the way, and I didn't expect this, so there was a lot of risks and hazards that could have been caused by this. And also the equipment. So the equipment that I was planning, I didn't have a lot of equipment, and I didn't also have like the specific equipment in my planning that I could have wanted, and it wasn't very. The drills weren't necessarily amazing to match the equipment. And then the delivery, the weaknesses of my delivery, and the teaching points were actually quite bad when I demonstrated, mainly because I think I was talking too quickly, or it was the way that I came across. But when I basically demonstrated, Some people didn't quite get it, and some people misunderstood me in some cases. And then the demonstration as well. When I demonstrated, I think some people were asking quite a few questions that they got a bit confused. So opportunities then. So basically, how can I improve my planning and how can I improve my delivery? So what can I do to improve them? So basically, I could go through some courses on planning. So basically, there's some courses out there, sort of like the Sports Leadership Award. They basically go through the stages of organising an exercise plan or going through an exercise session and how to organise it really. And they go through the different types of risk assessment and different types of drills and things you can do in different sports. Also, a lot of practice can definitely help planning, so just practicing, writing down on little notepads and things, basically practicing what type of drills I could do before I actually do the exercise session, and then also experience, so going out different places, doing work experience, job experience, basically getting yourself out there. So basically, for example, there's like courses with Albion and the community, and they basically get involved with loads of different colleges and schools. And you can basically just get involved and ask them. And then the delivery then. So as I said before, the Sports Leadership Award is very well known, and it basically gets people involved with coaching, and it gives them a qualification for coaching. And basically they teach people how to improve their coaching skills and their communication skills. And also I could go into work experience with Albion in the community, as I said again, and basically do some coaching drills with them, and they can teach me basically my strengths and weaknesses, but not only that, areas on how to improve. So threats then, what threats did I have with my planning and delivery? So my risk assessment basically had all the threats and possible risks that there were. So I basically used the sports hall, and there was different objects. So say, for example, there was benches, and there was basically 2 goals as well that could have been in the way of the match. And there were also quite a lot of tables and chairs, as I said before, but I didn't really have that in the risk assessment. So my risk assessment had a couple of tweaks to it, had a couple of things I missed out. So yeah, and then the space and the playing area as well. So the space that I had, the space that I wanted with the planning, basically wasn't a lot of space, and it could have been overcrowded depending on how many people I would have had in the session. So if I got given a lot of people, the space could have been quite very small. Also the playing area, for example, if the hall was out of area, if I couldn't use the hall, it would be quite difficult to find another place to actually play. And then the delivery, so basically my threats of delivery were the space in the end, because I had a lot of tables and chairs around, the space that I had was quite small and it was very limited. So that was a definite risk, and it was a definite threat, as because we didn't have a lot of space to play in. And also my adapting, so my adapting was definitely a risk because I didn't really plan to adapt. I mean, I planned what I could have done, but not to the extent that I had basically a full risk assessment about my adapting, about how I can adapt and stuff. So here are my 3 main strengths. So I adapted well, I had progressive drills, and I was enthusiastic. So basically when I adapted, I had positive feedback when I adapted, because it wasn't my fault that I had a lot of tables and chairs in the way and things. So I got good feedback when I adapted, and apparently the game situation was very ideal to the layup, and people learnt still, even though it was adapted. And also I got good feedback about my progressive drills, so as the session went along, they got harder and harder. So I got good feedback about that. And I was also, they also told me I was very enthusiastic, so I gave people good positive and negative feedback so that they can improve on things. So basically then, so we've got 3 areas for improvement. So this is my first one. So movement and involvement. So I was basically told that I wasn't moving a lot. So in the first session, I think I was standing still quite a lot. I mean, I was giving good feedback and stuff, but I was just standing still and I wasn't really getting involved. So in my development plan, if I was to improve in this, I'd basically do a lot more one-on-one teaching. So if someone was doing something wrong, I'd go over to them, and I'll get close up to them as well, and I'll just sort of go through the step-by-step teaching points again so that they can understand it and then execute it very well. Also, I need to be a bit more interactive, so basically getting involved with everyone, making sure everyone's having a good time, and basically just improving the general chemistry and the moral of the group as well. And as I said, basically getting close up so that people can basically get the hang of the teaching points. So my second area then, so the explanation and the teaching points. So as I said before, the teaching points were one of my downsides, as people were getting confused very easily. So also my explanation might be at fault here as well, because I wasn't as clear, and I wasn't very loud. So basically, with my development plan then, I need to be a lot more clearer, to basically when I come across, maybe slow my words down a bit when I talk, and then also project my voice a bit louder, because if there's two different groups on different sides of the court, then it's quite hard for one group to hear and the other not to, and it can get a bit confusing in a hall. So I basically need to project my voice a bit louder. Also, when I'm asking people, so basically, if people don't understand, I can basically ask them about what they think is right, or whether or not they heard me or not. So if someone is over the other side of the hall and I'm demonstrating something or I'm talking through something the other side, I could basically ask them over the other side of the hall if they heard or not. Also, my demonstration. So when I demonstrate, I could probably take it down to step by step again. So as I put it step by step, I could probably take my demonstration back down to step by step and go through it a lot slower than what I did do, so that everyone can understand and everyone can basically follow me. And then my last area for improvement is basically my communication. So when I came across, people were asking me a lot of questions on how to do things, as I said with the teaching points, but also my communication with people. If I'm telling them that they're doing something wrong, they would sort of ask me, and they'd sort of go, "What's wrong?" So doing this, basically having another one-on-one with them, so basically talking to them quite openly, and then basically so that they understand, and then a bit louder again, and then ask them questions about whether or not they understand, whether or not they heard me. So that was 16.3. Thank you for listening.